Well. Clemson Tiger fans, college football fans, welcome back to another episode of the All In Show here on the Voice of College Football Clemson channel. Thank you so much for joining myself and Jordan Bowman. We're here every Thursday at 7 p.m. to talk to you guys about all things Clemson football. Football season is raring up, man. It's cranking up. It's starting to get busy. We're heading into ACC Media Days next week. We got fall camp coming up. And then before we know it, Labor Day night will be here, and our Clemson Tigers will face off against the Duke Blue Devils in a standalone game. So I'm sure you guys are totally and completely excited about that, as am I. We got a pretty special show for you guys tonight. We got a special guest coming on a little bit later in the show. So stay tuned for that. But before I bring on my co-host, Jordan Bowman, if you are not subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button for us. It really helps us out. We're trying to grow this channel, and we cannot do so without the help of you. So please hit that subscribe button. Also hit a like. It helps us on these live videos. Helps it get it out to more people. And also share our videos, man. Share the channel. Get it out there in your Clemson groups and your college football groups, and bring more people in so that we can continue the conversation about Clemson football. But without further ado, we thank you all for being here. My co-host, my buddy, Jordan Bowman.
What's up, man?
What's up, man? How's it going?
Yeah, there was literally just a crack of thunder outside. It's been storming. I'm back in Clemson, so it's there's a storm system rolling through here. So if in case you guys hear some of that, hopefully my mic doesn't pick up too much of it. But other than that, things are going great.
Awesome, man. Yeah, you're back in the upstate of South Carolina, and
Yes,
we all know the unpredictability of the weather up there. So,
oh yeah, 100%.
But you sound good, man. I haven't heard anything yet. So,
all right, that's a good thing.
We're rocking and rolling, man.
But yeah, pretty eventful week in Clemson football.
Yeah, man.
We got a load of stuff to talk about. Got 2 commitments.
2 new commits.
Lost somebody to the transfer portal. We made some additions on the coaching staff.
Man,
we gonna hit it all. So
yeah, man, we got a ton to talk about, and a short time to talk about it because we got a guest coming on a little bit later in the show. So tons of stuff to talk about, man. So I guess let's start with the most obvious thing. We'll start with the positive first. Our 2 new recruits that we picked up. We picked up cornerback Ashton Hampton and edge rusher Adam Kashish, or how do you say his name? Kasai. Excuse me. Kasai. Adam Kasai and Ashton Hampton both committed to Clemson this past week. What was your kind of thoughts on those 2 dudes and their commitment to Clemson?
Well, I'll start with the guy that's kind of been on the radar for Clemson fans for the majority of the time. Ashton Hampton, defensive back out of Florida State University School in Tallahassee, Florida. Really tall, lengthy corner. A lot of connections to Clemson. His father actually played with Mike Reed when they were teammates in NFL Europe, I think, when they were playing up in Germany. So that relationship has been long-standing for a long time. This is a really good get for Clemson. He kind of has the ability to play both corner and safety. I feel like he'll play a lot of corner, but I feel like the staff likes him both, and he'll have that kind of versatility. I don't think it's going to affect, and it doesn't affect, Corian Gibson, another big-time target for Clemson. So I think this was a really nice get, a really underrated get, just because of his range. And athleticism. I think this is going to be a really good addition to the cornerback room. And it's a long-standing relationship, and those guys tend to work out a lot more than not for Clemson. So really love the get, really like the player, really good kid. And this was a really nice get from Mike Reed. And then the one that kind of popped on the table like pretty soon and then soon after, actually made his commitment was Adam Kasai, 6'7", 230 pounds, defensive end. Um, he was formerly committed to Minnesota, and
Mm.
when it was clear that Clemson, the goal for Clemson is to take two defensive ends in this class. Um, and obviously the Edric Houston sweepstakes seem to be trending away from them. And so they still want to add another body in that room. Adam Kasai was a guy that they had on their radar for a long time. He actually camped. Dabo was personally really impressed by him, just his frame, and he played well in that. He played shut out well in that camp too. But just the size and the intangibles are really, really intriguing. And so the potential and upside is pretty high. Um, so I thought this was a really nice get. He's been a Clemson fan. He grew up, Clemson was kind of his dream school. And when that offer came, it didn't take him long. He shortly decommitted from Minnesota after announcing his offer, and it was only a matter of time. What was funny is he actually put Clemson football in his Instagram bio before he had even made his commitment. It was pretty funny. I was like, wow, he didn't even wait.
Yeah.
It's the worst kept secret ever. It was clear, and even his coach tweeted out before he committed that Clemson was always where he had wanted to be, and that was kind of his dream school. So, I mean, you're getting two really good, really nice commitments, two players that wanted to be Tigers. You didn't really have to, do much convincing because that was just
Right.
kind of where they wanted to be. Um, and they provide a lot of upside, especially with Adam Kasai. He provides a lot of upside, and just two guys that are going to be really good culture fits for Clemson, and it could be big time contributors down the road. So really nice additions to the class, um, and kind of rounding out the defensive back and defensive line room. But yeah, that's about all I have on those two.
Yeah, man, winding closer to a close in this 2024 recruiting cycle, and I can't think of two better dudes to become or commit to be Clemson Tigers. It's nice when you get guys like this. Maybe they're not at the tippy top of your recruiting board. However, these dudes are they tend to be the most committed guys on your team, right? This is their dream school. This is the team that they really want to play for, and they're going to come in with that hunger, right? And you got to love the versatility of an Ashton Hampton. Um, the guy can kind of move all over the secondary, and we know how much Clemson likes versatility. So I think that's a great get for Clemson. And then Kasai, man, we were talking right before we came on. This dude's like 6'7", 230. A little small, a little slender for his big frame of 6'7". But then again, you think about the physical attributes that he possesses, right? And it just takes a strength and conditioning program like Clemson has, and then suddenly this dude, with a 6'7" frame, gets in there, gets with the nutritionist, gets with the weight training, and the support staff that Clemson has, and then suddenly you got a big time player on your hands, right? So super excited about these dudes. It's always good when the ball keeps rolling, especially with kind of how our July started. After a very hot June, July started off a little rocky, but we're settling down. We're moving back in the right direction, and it's still an amazing class. I think we finished with a top 10 class for sure. By the time December rolls around and it's all said and done, because I'm pretty sure most of these dudes are going to be signing at the early signing day in December, or really that is signing day now. is the December. So yeah, man, good stuff along the recruiting trail.
Absolutely. And one more thing I want to touch on is, obviously Clemson's offensive line recruiting has been kind of a subject of angst for the fan base. But the Clemson is still planning to move forward and take take three, if they can, on the offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
Interior offensive line Elijah Thurman he received an offer recently. I believe he will be at the cookout on July 28th, the all-in cookout. So that's kind of a name to know. I'd also keep an eye on Favor Edwin, offensive tackle. Just started playing football this year, but has been kind of racking up a lot of offers because of his size and he's kind of how he's been showing out in camps. So he's an intriguing guy that I think Clemson is going to have some interest in down the road. But yeah, other than that, I think that's about it for recruiting. Well, it's not about it for recruiting, but
Yeah,
uh, we can talk about what happened yesterday if we want, but I
yeah, we
don't know if
can.
there's much to talk
Yeah,
about there.
yeah, not a whole lot to talk about. Those of you out there, I'm sure you guys know who we're referring to. That is the receiver Mike Matthews that we were kind of holding out. Me and Jordan were kind of holding out hope for that we were still in a good position for, but he decides to go ahead and shut down his recruitment and commit to Tennessee. So
Yep.
it's been kind of a rough cycle for us this year with Tennessee. They've grabbed a couple dudes from us, but that's kind of just how it goes on the recruiting trail, man. Sometimes you lose some of these battles, and then it could be rolling around to the 2025 recruiting class, and Clemson wins, the majority of the battles against Tennessee. It's just the ebbs and flows of recruiting. You can never predict it. Just when you think they get swept out from under you by another team, right? Talking about some of the offensive linemen that we've missed on in this recruiting class. So it's never over till it's over. But I don't think, as much as we would have loved to have Mike Matthews, we got two big time receivers in this class, and I think we can certainly be comfortable with where we're at with that.
Absolutely. I mean, Mike Matthews would have been a great get. I mean, I
Yeah.
like let's not
Yeah, no, no,
make
no, no.
your
Make no mistake about it. We would have been
right.
super excited to have him as a
But
recruit.
but like you said, I mean, Clemson has two, I think, really high end talents at wide receiver already committed. The number was always two, and they thought, if Mike Matthews or Cam Coleman wanted to come, that was kind of they were oversign worthy. But I think the staff is perfectly fine with how things are shaping out on that front, and you get two really high end talents. I think TJ Moore in particular might be due for a significant bump uh, when the season gets through. So we'll see how that plays out. But regardless, you're getting two really talented guys. And so, yeah, I think the future at the wide receiver position is definitely something to be excited about.
Yeah, and then just to finish up with recruiting before we move on, Jordan, we got Gibson committing this Saturday. So that's somebody that Clemson, I think, is still, you know, in the running for. Obviously, I think it comes down to a Texas Clemson battle. We'll see which way that goes. What are your feelings on Gibson since he'll be committing this Saturday?
Pretty optimistic.
Yeah.
I do think there was a lot of Clemson buzz coming out of his official visit earlier in June, but he wanted to continue taking his visits. We all knew that the in-state school Texas was always going to be a factor. He's got a lot of people in his camp that want him at Texas, and they were going to have significant pull. His visit went really well, and from what I can gather, both sides feel confident. Corian Gibson is a guy that kind of he hasn't really shown his cards. It's kind of similar to Mike Matthews, where he hasn't really shown his cards too much
Mm-hmm.
about where he's leaning. But both sides feel good about where they stand. So I mean, if I had to, I wouldn't want to call him a lean anywhere right now. It feels sort of like a 50-50 type deal. So Clemson could be in for a really nice surprise on Saturday, or it could be really disappointed. So we'll see. I know that's not the answer that Clemson fans would want to hear, but that's
No.
just kind of it's kind of where I'm feeling right now. It feels like a coin flip at this point because I do think it was a positive that he didn't commit right out of his Texas visit.
Mm-hmm.
And Clemson has certainly, made its push, and both schools are kind of finalizing and making their final pushes before he announces. So we'll see how that ends up. It's kind of been a back and forth type of thing. There was some Ohio State buzz earlier in the month, and there was some thought that maybe Ohio State was in it more than they are, but I don't really put much stock into that. I think
Yeah.
it is primarily a Clemson Texas battle, and we'll see whether Clemson can pull one out of Texas's backyard because it's
Yeah, man.
always tough to beat out the home state school. So we'll see how that turns out.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I mean, I think you're correct in the 50-50 thing, and I think he does have a lot of people in his ear talking about Texas. That's where he's from, so it's definitely an uphill battle. I think for Clemson, uh, but I think one that we could certainly win, and hopefully we pull out one of these 50-50 ones. Our track record hasn't been too good on these 50-50 ones in the month of July, anyway. So. Uh, but we'll be just fine. Recruiting is looking up. Like I said, I think we'll finish with a top 10 class. So um, no, no worries there.
Absolutely. All right. Now we talked about the recruiting, the good news, the two commitments.
Yeah,
Let's you know what? Let's start with some negative. Let's do some negatives, and then we can talk about another positive uh, with the coaching staff stuff. So let's go ahead and get this out of the way.
let's do it.
Um, Obviously, if you've been tuned in since yesterday, you know that linebacker TJ Dudley, second year linebacker TJ Dudley, has left the team. Has not formally entered the transfer portal because the window doesn't open, isn't open right now. But he has left the team. He's been dismissed from the team for a violation of team rules. Obviously, there is a lot of speculation about what's been going on, and um, I won't get into. We don't want to get into too many details, but it was something that was serious and something that needed to be handled the way it was handled.
Hmm.
And so, moving on from that, it's more about where do we go from here? Because TJ Dudley was a guy that was expected to play a lot of minutes this year. I
Hmm.
mean, with the departure of Trenton Simpson, um, and him being a second year guy, but behind Barrett Carter, Jeremiah Trotter Jr., he was kind of considered to be one of the guys that was next up and was going to get significant playing time in the rotation. So uh, Clemson's linebacker depth just took a hit. It's a pretty
Yep.
significant hit. So, I mean, what do you think the options are? Because there's been kind of some ideas about, hey, does Clemson go into the transfer portal and take a linebacker? I don't really anticipate that. Um, do they are they just fine with the numbers that they're at, or are some guys going to have to change positions? Are they going to play more defensive backs? There's a lot of different ways this could play out. So, what did you think?
Yeah, I mean it's tough to know right now. I think we'll know maybe a little bit more, part of the way through spring. It's really tough to know how they're going to play it. I think we got good depth at safety, so that could be an option to play one of those guys down or something like that. There is a little bit of depth in the linebacker room, but depth is certainly a concern right now, for sure. And linebacker, oddly enough, if you would have asked us a month ago, that was one of the positions we were super comfortable with on the defense, right? And we are still with the guys that'll run out there first. But at the end of the day, Wade Woodaz, Jeremiah Trotter, and Barrett Carter can't be out there 100% of the snaps, right? So um, I think we'll know how they'll play it. I don't see them going into the transfer portal and picking up anybody unless they just don't like what they see in fall camp. But I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, it's an opportunity for some of those guys that didn't get any playing time last year, some of those guys that redshirted last year to really step up and take some playing time, right? Because TJ Dudley was a guy that we were expecting to see early and often this year. He was going to get probably the majority of the reps as far as a reserve linebacker role. So to see him leave is not a good situation. But when you do certain things, you lose the privilege to be on a team like Clemson. So unfortunately, that's what happened. But what I do know is that Wes Goodwin, like Brent Venables, is a guy that's going to play to his defensive strengths. So if he has to structure in a different way, I think he'll be very comfortable in mixing up the coverages and adapting and overcoming and covering up that depth issue that we may end up having at linebacker. Especially when you talk about the length of a college football season. You're one injury away from being in a whole lot of trouble in that linebacker room. as far as proven guys on the field, right? So definitely something to keep your eye on during fall camp, something to watch, something to see. I'll be interested to see when we talk to Dabo later on in fall camp how he feels about the depth at linebacker, how he feels about those guys behind, the names that we all know and expect to be out there and perform at a high level. So we'll see how it goes. It'll be interesting.
Yeah. And something that, has been talked about a lot is kind of, if you listen to Wes Goodwin talking at the media availability day, he talked a lot about how they primarily plan to be a base 4-2-5. So really, they only plan to have two linebackers on the field at a time, at least in their base defense. But obviously, they're going to have different packages and stuff. So I mean, that does kind of make it a little bit easier to manage because you're not hoping to have three linebackers on the field and rotating three on and off the field at any given time. So you kind of can conserve your depth a little bit when you're short on numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Could definitely walk, and if you feel like you need to have a third linebacker out there, you could walk a defensive back and play
Mm-hmm.
sort of like a nickel Sam type of thing.
Right.
And I think that's kind of where a guy like Wade Woodaz would come in, and that's a position he played a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But it is something that Clemson fans it should be something to keep note of. I don't think it's a doomsday thing just because of
No.
how good the guys you have starting are, and I still think there's some really talented guys behind them. Outside of Wade Woodaz, obviously we know about Jamal Anderson and D. Creighton, Kobe McLeod.
Kobe McLeod. Yep.
And there are guys in this room that Clemson is high on,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just we haven't seen a ton of. So that's kind of where the concern lies, and we'll just have to see how it plays out. I definitely don't expect them to go into the transfer portal and take a guy.
No.
You just gotta hope for some injury luck that Trotter and Carter stay healthy.
Yep.
And if you have to, I think there are guys at other positions that can help you out and kind of mask sort of that concern. So we'll see how it plays out.
Absolutely. I think they'll be just fine.
Absolutely. All right. Well, got that out of the way. Now let's talk about something that we actually want to talk about.
Yeah.
And that is the two exciting additions that Clemson made on the coaching staff. Last week, it came out that former Clemson running back James Davis is joining the staff as a graduate assistant, kind of assisting with the running backs while I don't remember what the program it is that they have, but that Clemson has where former players come back and he wants to work on his master's. And so this is a really good opportunity for him to really get his feet wet in the coaching sphere as well as working on his master's. So this is a really exciting addition for the running backs room. I mean, if you've been following Clemson for any amount of time, you know the name James Davis, just one of the great backs in school history. So what did you think about that when you heard it?
Man, I tell you, honestly, I was shocked to hear about it, just because to me it kind of came out of nowhere. And the timing of it's pretty crazy. Heading straight into fall camp. But honestly, I'm excited. I can't wait. I think we got a great running back coach in C.J. Spiller, and everybody knows the relationship that C.J. Spiller and James Davis has. CJ talked about it in his interview on the Clemson football media availability this week. He talked about James Davis and how much he's been bothering him over the past couple of years. They're like, hey, man, you're the last running back of that core of running backs, when I was there, that has yet to complete their degree. So he talked about how much he's been bothering him to come back and finish his degree, and it just lines up perfectly with James Davis' life and what he wants to do. So he wants to come to Clemson and continue his degree program, and I think that's a great thing that Clemson has when former players can come back and all that stuff and come back and get their degree that they maybe didn't finish at the time. And it's just another voice and a voice with a lot of pull, right? With a lot of respect behind it. Like James Davis at Clemson, like he is a guy, right? Like he's that kind of guy. So, and I think with C.J. Spiller's personality and then James Davis' personality, kind of the more louder, boisterous kind of guy, I think it'll be nice to see those dudes play off of each other in the running back room. And it's kind of funny that it happens when we have a similar kind of running back dynamic at Clemson right now. Everybody can remember back when C.J. Spiller and James Davis were running backs at Clemson, and they were referred to as Thunder and Lightning, right? So CJ was the Lightning, James Davis was the Thunder, right? And they were a problem for teams. That 1-2 punch that was really a problem. And I think it's funny that they come together as running backs coach. I know he'll be a grad assistant, so he'll kind of just be in the back, kind of helping out. But I assume he'll be in the running back room. I don't know where else he would go, right? And it'll be cool to have them in there. And then you got Will Shipley and Phil Maffa, who they can, impart some of their experiences on, about, being a two running back system and, really supporting each other and how that looks and, the great relationship that they had. And I think Shipley and Maffa have the same type of relationship. I think it's just going to be cool to see it play out. I think it's a great move for Dabo and the Clemson staff. It certainly adds experience, at least from a player perspective. Obviously, he doesn't have coaching experience, but the guy understands the running back position like few do. So, super excited about James Davis joining the staff.
Absolutely. And I mean, you kind of mentioned it. The personalities are really you kind of get the best of both worlds there with James Davis coming in, and he's definitely like I've seen him. I've seen him like because he does a lot of camps and stuff. He's obviously hasn't gone full on into coaching, so this will be his first into like a true like college football program. But he's intense. I mean, he's gonna get after you, and I think that's the kind of fire that I think he could really add to this running back room. And I'm sure him and Shipley will be really well. Him, Shipley, and Moffitt really, because they were all three of them were hard runners as running backs. I think those three will really mesh well together. So that's really exciting for this staff. And I'm just excited for the future of the Clemson running back room in general, because that's a heck for a couple of years or a year.
That's a heck of a room, dude. I mean, when you think about the coaching staff in that room now, and the running backs that are in that room, and I'm not just talking about Shipley and Malfa. You got Thomas, you got Keith there, our new guy and Jarvis Green. Look, that is a really, really, really good running back room right now, and I think we should be very excited to see how they're used in a Garrett Riley system this year.
Absolutely. And then to move on to the second and probably the one that blew up the most addition to the Clemson staff was none other than another familiar name.
Oh, who is it?
Former offensive coordinator Chad Morris will be joining the Clemson staff as a offensive analyst, a volunteer. What did they call it? I think they called it a volunteer offensive assistant.
A volunteer role. So he'll be there like Monday through Thursday, and then he'll be traveling to watch his son play college football at TCU.
TCU, yeah.
Oddly enough, look at those connections.
Yeah.
But
really, another really exciting addition, and probably the biggest, just because of Chad Morris's extensive experience at the college level. I mean, just even going beyond his time at Clemson. I mean, he was one of the best high school coaches in the state of Texas. He was a head coach for SMU in Arkansas. Mm-hmm. Not a very successful one, but
not really.
He was a head coach nonetheless. And that's kind of these are the kind of coaches that you see take these analyst roles anyway. So, but you want that kind of experience anyway. And then he's been an offensive coordinator at other spots as well. So, we know what success he had at Clemson. I think that's kind of the biggest thing is having that voice in the room. and he's just going to be there. He's not going to have a whole lot of say in game plan. He's just going to be
No.
analyzing, watching film, giving his input, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of invaluable, and that's something that I think a lot of Clemson fans probably wanted Dabo to do a lot more of. I mean, you see
Right.
guys like Nick Saban and Kirby Smart, and a lot of the top coaches bringing in former head coaches as analysts for their
Mm-hmm.
staff. I mean, I think Lincoln Riley just brought in Cliff Kingsbury
Yeah.
as a quarterback assistant
Crazy.
at USC. That's crazy. He was just an
Crazy.
NFL head coach, and he was a college head
this,
coach as well. So I
this
mean, I
man was this man was coaching in the NFL 2 years ago,
yeah,
and now he's a offensive analyst for Southern Cal. But to your point, man, I'm glad to see that Clemson's starting to do this as well, because I thought it was something that I think it's something that we definitely needed to do, right? And everybody knows Chad Morris. If you're a Clemson fan, Chad Morris has a great reputation at Clemson. I could care less what he did at SMU and Arkansas and how terrible his teams are. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me, right? What matters to me is what he brought to Clemson, and that was he's the one that initiated the original offense that snowballed into basically two national championships. We were running a version of his offense even after he left in 2015, right? When Tony Elliott took over. He was the one that kind of groomed Tony Elliott. So Chad Morris really is the author of that Clemson offense as we know it. And now we're transitioning into a new age of Clemson offense. And I think it's valuable to have guys like him and James Davis to just be kind of in the background, looking at your processes, looking at what you're doing, watching tape, and just interjecting what they're seeing, right? It's just another perspective from guys that really know ball that could, maybe help you add just something a little extra to a game plan on a big week when you're playing a game with small margins of error, right? And that's what you're looking for in major college football. You need those little things that will give you just the slightest edge, because once you get into November and December, right? Those margins for error get really really small, especially if you want to go to the playoffs and compete for national championships. So I couldn't be happier with our two most recent coaching hires, if you will. Um, I think it's gonna definitely help us, certainly. So
yeah. And I just wanted to address this real quick. Yeah, I hope Byron gets in and says, I hope that doesn't make any problems with Garrett. Yeah, I don't expect that to be an issue at all.
no,
His role is again as volunteer, and he's only going to be really doing it Monday through Thursday.
yeah,
It's going to be he's going to be in the office. He's going to be just huddling over and just staring at tape and kind of and then giving some of his input. But he's not going to be heavily involved in game
no,
planning or anything or the day-to-day operations of the offense or the program and all that. So I don't expect there to be really any issues there. He's not going to be imparting his own offensive philosophies and stuff.
no,
He's just going to give his thoughts and kind of what he sees and just what an offensive analyst does. So
yeah, and it's
definitely don't expect them to really. I don't expect that to be an issue.
yeah. I mean, and it's not an on the field role, so
Right.
he's not gonna be down there coaching the players or anything like that. He's gonna be in the back, watching film and doing things like that, and just giving his input that way. But Dabo's already made it very clear, if you've watched his interviews, that this is Garrett Riley's offense. He's running the show, so I don't think it's anything like that. Not at all.
Yeah, and I agree with LFG. He says Morris and Garrett, as fellow Texans, have mutual friends in the coaching community and will get along well. Great adds to the Clemson staff, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I mean, these two have they have a lot of connections. They definitely know of each other, having been in the
Oh
state
yeah,
of Texas at the same time, even if they maybe aren't like friends. I don't know what their relationship is, their prior relationship is, but I'm sure they have a great deal of respect for each other, and I definitely don't think there would be any kind of issue there. It's not like Chad is coming in expecting to be like, "Yep, this is my offense now.
yeah.
Run my offense."
Step aside, Garrett. I know they
Right.
just paid you a boatload of money, but this is my show, right? I
Yeah.
don't. I don't think you can run the show and only be working Monday through Thursday. I don't
Yeah.
think that's how that works.
No, you couldn't. And plus,
Uh,
he wants to, and as you mentioned, he wants to be able to see his kid play. I mean, Chandler
Right.
Morris is probably going to be the starter at TCU this year. He was the starter at the beginning of last year before he got hurt. So he's going to go and want to watch his son play. And that TCU connection is probably another thing that gets them to go along because Garrett, coached his son. So
Right.
it's a pretty nice connection.
I'm sure they know each other pretty well. I mean, I'm sure they've ran into each other on the recruiting trail in Texas for years, and obviously Chad Moore's son playing for Garrett Riley. So they obviously have a relationship prior to Chad Morris walking into the building at Clemson.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I think we covered pretty much everything, all the bases that we wanted to hit.
Sure.
We have our special guest. He's been waiting in the back room for about 10 minutes now, so I'm sure he's ready to get on here. But this is a guy that I've been cool with for a really long time, and it's been really cool to kind of see his career kind of take off. I've been working with SG1 Sports and Mark Rogers over at over with the Georgia channel. Just a guy that I have a lot of respect for. We kind of go at it on Twitter a little bit about Clemson, about Georgia. It's a really cool thing. But I would like you guys to please give a warm welcome to none other than my guy, Tyler P. What's going on, man?
Guys?
Hey, what's up, man? How's it going?
Pretty good, man. I'm recovering. Was sick for a majority of the summer, but I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely, man. It's great to have you on. We were talking about this this was kind of in the makings for 2 weeks now. It was just kind of a inconspicuous little Twitter interaction. I think I don't even remember what you said, but I think you said that Clemson was going 9-3 or something like that, and I was like, "Oh, why don't you come on the show and tell us all about it?"
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how it started, and then we started talking in the DMs, and this came together. And so, Tyler, this has been a really interesting offseason. Well, really interesting past couple of years for Clemson. And you certainly have been as tuned in as anybody. You're a very knowledgeable guy. What are your kind of overall thoughts of the direction of the Clemson program heading into the 2023 season?
Well, just think of it like this. You've lost 3 games in the past 2 seasons, right? Go back to like 2016 through 2020. Didn't you only lose a total of 6 games? I mean, I could be wrong. It's like 5 or 6, something like that.
Yeah, you're right.
So obviously you've been not as amazing as you've been in the past. But again, 9-10 wins. That's what the trademark has been these past 2 seasons. That's what you're kind of expected to do this year. Vegas listed you guys at 9.5 as the over/under, I believe.
Yeah, 9.5.
Yeah. Not trying to say it's going yet, but you were up here. It's starting to come down a little bit. Stagnantly, but it's not like a sudden fall off like as you've seen as Nebraska when they transitioned into the Big Ten. They literally went from winning 10 games 9-10 games every year to now what they are at. They won 3 games a season pretty much for the past 4 or 5 seasons. It's not like that. It's more of happens periodically with a lot of teams that kind of come out like you saw Florida over a couple years ago, kind of come down after being up top for 5 or 6 seasons, but like I said, first things first, I said this on the Pigskin Pete show. I tried to go out it with Pigskin Pete. I don't know if anyone watched it. I don't know if you guys watched it.
I tuned in.
Oh yeah, I was there.
So I wanted him to convince me why Clemson's going to win 11 games, not just say I'm a potato or an idiot, because I agree with 90% of the population in saying Clemson's going to go 9-3 or 10-2. But like I'll make some similar points like I was making with Pigskin Pete. Number one, the two big things. It comes on the offensive side, unfortunately. inexperience at QB, that might plague you early in the season.
Mhm.
Here's the thing, Cade Klubnik, probably the second or third most talented QB in his class. You know, you got Drew Allar, Connor Wegman, and then Cade Klubnik. I think out of the three, I think Drew Allar might be a little bit more talented than the other two. You know, but Cade Klubnik and Wegman are right there, neck and neck. And then wide receiver. Production, look at the stats alone, not there. And then even depth at wide receiver, not something that you guys are, have been used to, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. 0 5-star wide receivers on the roster and 4 4-stars, I believe. The rest are 3 stars, and then I don't know what Spectre is. I know Will Taylor
was not a 4-star. 4 4-stars. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna just run through this. So Antonio Williams and Adam Randall, I know, were 4 stars. Bo Collins was a 4-star.
4-star.
Noble Johnson coming in was a 4-star.
4-star.
Ronan Hannafin was a 4-star. Well, so we're at 5 now.
And then Troy Stellato.
Troy Stellato.
Yeah,
was a 4-star. So 6 4-stars.
So looking over the past couple of seasons, you've had some really, really, really good, if not elite, wide receivers. And I'm not saying that you sort of need that this year. I'm saying you don't really have anything, to be honest, close to that, other than I would say Antonio Williams is probably the best slot wide receiver in the ACC. Some people disagree with me on that. I think he's going to be the best this year. This is going to be his second year as a starter, but I think he's going to be the best slot wide receiver in the ACC. Adam Randall, wasn't he hurt majority of last year? He also was a true freshman.
Yeah,
right?
he was recovering from an ACL injury all season. So
yeah, and obviously he was a true freshman, highly rated guy. And then behind that, a lot of kind of inexperience there at wide receiver. I think those two groups might plague you early on. Wide receiver maybe longer than QB, because I really like Garrett Riley. I mean, he learned under 2 really good offensive minds. Sonny Dykes, obviously, branched off of Mike Leach. In fact, Sonny Dykes was the offensive coordinator the year that Texas Tech should have won the Big 12.
Yep.
But they got snubbed. I think that was 2007 or was it 2008? One of those 2 years.
2008, but yeah,
one of those 2 years. And who else was I thinking about? Sonny Dykes. Oh, and obviously Lincoln Riley, duh. But I think early on the offense might not be as good as what a lot of the fans are expecting. Then it's going to start to pick up. And listen, here's the thing. Your first game of the year, I don't know what's going on with YouTube comments or YouTubers. I don't know if either of you guys watch this. There is a lot of hype around Duke this year.
Oh, I know all about it.
It's disgusting. I'm not gonna lie to you. Their over under is set at 6.5, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know. Look at their schedule. Their schedule is much tougher than last year. I'm not trying to hate on Mike Elko. I think he's going to be a really, really, really good head coach.
Go look at their wins from last year.
Yeah, last year they played 8 close games or something like that. They went 4-4. Their best win was Central Florida.
In the bowl game, yeah, probably.
Yeah.
But let's be real here. Is there any player that really concerns you on Duke's roster? Maybe their QB, what's his name?
Riley
Leonard, yeah.
They have a couple decent defensive linemen, and then that's pretty much off the top of my head I could really think about. I think you guys will struggle a little bit in that game, but you'll win that by at least 10 to 14, maybe even 17 to 20 points. I'm not one of those people picking you to lose to Duke. I think that is if you're expecting Clemson to lose to Duke, then you really think Clemson's going to be a horrible team. And I'm not trying to say that. I think Clemson's going to be a really good team, just not what they've been these past couple of seasons. So, I mean, I can go down not the roster, but their schedule with you and pick games, but it's up to you guys if you want to do that.
I hear some of your points, and I will say this: there is reason for concern with the wide receiver group. Okay, that's the first thing that everybody that's talking about Clemson going 9-3 or worse is going to bring up. The first thing they're going to bring up is wide receiver, and I understand that. No, do we have a 5-star on the roster currently? No, uh, that is true. Our best two wide receivers, probably right now from a production standpoint, is Bo Collins and Antonio Williams. Antonio Williams could be a great receiver. We heard Dabo talk about him earlier in the week at Clemson Media Day. Talk about he's thicker, faster, stronger, right? So that's a good thing. Hopefully, he goes into his sophomore season and he progresses nicely, right? I think a guy like Bo Collins, because of his injury history, maybe gets a little bit of a bad rep. And fair enough, he hasn't been on the field as much as he's needed, right? He was plagued by a shoulder injury last year. He also had an ankle injury last year. So he kind of had an injury riddled season. And that's kind of the story for everybody outside of Antonio Williams. But with that said, we do have some dudes at wide receiver if they stay healthy. And I realize that that's a big if. Understand that. But that's every team in major college football. You need your talent to stay healthy in order to compete and do what you want to do. But you got a guy in Adam Randall. I mean, the dude's huge. He's athletic. He can absolutely be a guy that can take over. I think so. I think he's a guy that could take over a game if, he can get that knee figured out. He's supposed to be fully healthy heading into fall camp, according to Dabo Sweeney. You got a guy like Troy Stellato that we have not seen since he's been in a Clemson uniform. Not a single season, really, outside of a couple snaps here and there. But that's a guy that's an absolute speedster, right? So Ronan Hannafin, he's a summer guy, summer enrollee. So we'll see what he looks like in fall camp. I do understand the questions at wide receiver, but what I don't totally agree with, as far as I guess the narrative on YouTube with some people, is that Clemson doesn't have talent at wide receiver. That's just not true. Clemson has plenty of talent at wide receiver. Now, will they stay healthy and produce on the field? We'll see. That's what they play the games for. But Clemson definitely has talent at wide receiver. And to your point with, the passing game maybe struggling early in the season, you got Will Shipley and Phil Maffa and 4 returning starters along the offensive line that could maybe, help ease that pain a little bit by being able to run the ball effectively, especially in some of those early games. Until the first huge game that we have, not that Duke's a pushover. I'm not saying that at all. You got to show up. You got to be ready for the game, obviously. It's a conference game. But the first real test for Clemson is going to be Florida State at the end of September, last weekend in September. So I think they have time to figure it out early in the season. And I think they can lean on the running game and Garrett Riley's creative play calling. You got a guy in Jake Brennistool that's going to be a matchup nightmare across the middle. If used properly, he would have been a matchup nightmare last year, but he wasn't. Him and Davis Allen, who's in the NFL now. So I think we have plenty of talent. Do I think they, look like Garrett Riley's offense from TCU last year, game 1? Probably not. But I don't think they have to in order to win because Clemson's defense is going to be for real as well. So that's just kind of my thoughts. Jordan?
And I think one of the exciting things and something that Clemson, the offense has kind of suffered from the last 2 years, and it's why people are so down on the Clemson offense in general, is because you haven't really had a guy, a play caller that has really called to the strengths of the offense. I mean, the past 2 seasons and really last year, Brandon Streeter was it seemed like he was trying to be as balanced as possible, be a jack of all trades type of offense that could do a lot of things really well, but instead you were just average at a lot of things. And when you had a team, when you played a team with, somewhat comparable talent to you, you struggled a lot of the time, and you struggled against some teams that weren't nearly as talented as you as well. So I think what Garrett Riley has shown himself to be able to do in his experience as an offensive coordinator is really build the offense around what the team does well and the strengths of the offense. And I think part of that is the offensive line, the running backs, and the tight ends. And because of that, if the wide receivers aren't up to snuff, I think there is an adaptability that Garrett Riley has as far as his offense and his philosophy that makes it adaptable to many different personnel groupings, many different formations. So whatever the offense is good at, they're going to do a lot, and they're going to do really well. And they're not going to try to be special and cute and try to do all these different things. And I think that's kind of what's exciting, because even if you are deficient talent-wise at wide receiver, you'll be able to make up for it in other ways. And again, with the wide receiver room, it's really just we haven't seen a lot of these guys. It's not really it's certainly not the wide receiver rooms of old, like the Sammy Watkins, the DeAndre Hopkins, or anything like that. But I don't think this offense needs that to be successful. I think you have the prerequisite talent, and you have some guys that could be big time playmakers for you. It's really just about stepping up. And again, that takes projection on our part, and is why if an outsider looking in looks at that and says, I don't know, I got to believe it to see it, it's perfectly understandable. So, but at the end of the day, I think the biggest thing is having an offensive coordinator that knows the strengths and understands the strengths and weaknesses of the offense, and is able to tailor the offense around that.
Yeah, and I want to make sure I get because one of the biggest points and reasonings why I was on here is to find the 3 losses. So I kind of want to jump straight into the schedule. Like I said, I think you guys are going to beat Duke, and like to you guys' point, I think the offense isn't going to look like TCU's offense. Let's just be real, week 1. All right. And what did TCU do really good last year? Well, they were actually a pretty good rush team, and they could throw the football. I mean, Sonny Dykes and Garrett Riley drew up some really good plays. They were pushing it down the field as fast and at times at a manageable pace. They could adjust the tempo pretty well. TCU was actually one of the best teams to do that last season. A lot of people threw out they throw out Quentin Johnston's name. Obviously, big time wide receiver. Not a lot of people were talking about Savion Williams, TCU's second best wide receiver. I mean, he had close to 1,000 yards last year.
He did
under the rug. Tay Barber, another guy, he was their slot wide receiver last year. Kind of had a letdown season. I don't know if you guys follow the Big 12 preseason projections or whatever. I believe he was a first teamer. He was first team Big 12 preseason slot wide receiver. He was supposed to be the preseason slot wide receiver. Didn't have the year that he wanted to, but these other and then the rushing game was really, really good. Like I said, they had a good 1-2 punch. So again, I expect some of that, a lot of that, to be implemented into Clemson's offense this year. But like I said, I think early on it's going to be kind of the struggle. Now, lucky for you, the first 3 games you should really, let's be real here, push by. And then, like you said, you get to Florida State end of September. Here's the thing. A lot of people disagree with me on this. I think Florida State is a more complete team. They have more experience on the offense. They have, 3rd or 4th year starters almost on every position on their defense. They bring in some transfer guys who's that guy from Western Michigan? Fiske, something like that. He was their star defensive tackle. Now, not like this matters, but I go to Kent State, so I've seen this guy play before. He was insane at Western Michigan. And then they brought in another cornerback and a couple corners off of, by the way, one of the best secondaries in college football last year, where they were top 5 in pass defense. But they add in some other pieces on that defense. And and really offensive line. I mean, I think they had 2 or 3 transfer offensive linemen. They have a lot of experience. They got Bell from South Carolina. I mean, this was actually one of the best transfer portal teams this past offseason. I think they were top 3. And oh, by the way, they got Michigan State's Keon Coleman. So you look at this roster, again, it's not more talented than Clemson, but I think it's a little bit more complete. Now, I think you guys are going to disagree with me on that.
Yeah.
But I'm looking for holes with Florida State. Again, they have better wide receivers. They got a more experienced QB. Offensive line could be kind of a question mark for them because they bring in 3 or 4 guys. They got 2 really good running backs. Defensively, they're going to have a really good defensive line, really good linebackers. I like Kalen DeLoach. And who else? Bethune or something like that.
Bethune, yeah.
And then Lundy, I think he's behind the I think he's a second stringer or whatever.
Yeah.
And then their secondary should be not as good as last year, but still pretty good. I think they are a slightly more complete team, and I think they're going to beat you this year in Death Valley. Now, a lot of people are going to be upset at that. I want to get your guys' thoughts on that before I move on to who do you play, Syracuse or Wake Forest or whatever, before your bye. So I want to get your thoughts on that Florida State game.
Yeah. And I think that one of the important things that you did point out was that you do think that Clemson is the more talented team, but Florida State, obviously, they have the more proven experience, production. We've seen a lot of the guys on that roster play at a high level. Jordan Travis had a great season last year. The offensive line has made just vast improvements in that program since Alex Atkins has been the offensive line coach and offensive coordinator. And they brought in some transfer portal help on that side of the ball, or on the lines as well. And then defensively, really good defensive line. I don't know how they brought Jared Verse back. I felt like he could have at least been a day 2 pick, but he decides to come back. You get guys like Robert Cooper and Fabian Lovett coming back. You bring in Braden Fisk, Warren McClendon, Gilbert Edmond. So they brought in a lot of guys from the transfer portal. Kentrell Cypress at DB as well. So I understand why, from an outsider, a third-party perspective, why Florida State, just is an intriguing pick because of how well they finished the year last year, and kind of what they've brought back and what they've brought in. I do think that this is going to be a tight game. I mean, the spread is what, Clemson minus 2.5, 3, something like that ish, depending on where you look.
Basically, home field advantage.
Yeah. Basically. So Vegas kind of sees these teams power rated about equally on a neutral field. So it's going to be a really tight game. And it was last year even, Clemson got up big early, but Florida State kind of battled back in the fourth quarter. And they're going to look to try to, improve on that and kind of not have the kind of issues they did in the middle of the game last year. But I think the biggest thing is, when you look at these two teams, I think that Clemson has – I think the addition of Garrett Riley and the progression of Cade Klubnik, hopefully, from year 1 to year 2 will be enough to kind of make Clemson look more like the type of team that their talent profile says they should be. I mean, they're 5th in the country in blue chip ratio, top 5, 6 talent, roster talent in all of college football.
Yeah.
I do think that Florida State, from a depth perspective, does not have what Clemson does. And I think that's kind of where the difference in the game will be, is that Florida State, they have a really good starting 22. They brought it in, especially with the transfer portal additions they've made and all of that. But I do think they have some question marks. I mean, at linebacker, if Tatum Bethune goes down, or Kalen DeLoach goes down, they really don't have much behind them. If at edge rusher, if a Jared Verse or Pat Payton goes down, there's not much there. They haven't recruited at that spot very well. So I think stuff like that, and these guys can't play every play. They're going to have to sub. They're going to have to bring in guys off the bench during that game. And I think you'll start to see in that game Clemson's depth sort of win out, and sort of the amount of replacement level, starting caliber replacement level players. I think Clemson has more of, and I think that's going to be the difference in the game.
Yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying about Florida State. I do think Clemson's the more talented team, but I understand that Florida State will probably be playing with some players with more production on the field. The one thing that concerns me a little bit about them is their offensive line. You kind of mentioned it. They do bring in, they lost 3 offensive linemen off of that team last year, so that's a big deal. They did bring in some great transfer portal guys to fill those holes, but again, offensive line is one of those weird positions where your guys just kind of have to gel, and that only comes with repetition and them being out there playing together. So I think that could be an area of concern for Florida State. And Clemson is really deep in the defensive tackle position, right? I also think that Clemson's a year older. Our pass defense wasn't good last year. Let's make no mistake about it. It was not good. But part of that was a lot of injuries. And then the other part was we had to play a lot of young dudes. We played a lot of true freshmen last year in the back end out of necessity just based off of injuries. Now, that was a negative for us that last year, but that's a positive for Clemson heading into the 2023 season, in my opinion, because those dudes got so much time, so many quality snaps in big-time games last year, and now those are our 2 deep guys. Because Sheridan Jones came back. You got a Nate Wiggins who is, we kind of seen grow up in front of our eyes last season. He had a couple really, really terrible games, but he's a guy that just doesn't quit, and you saw him get better as the season progressed. And then you got our play caller on defense, Wes Goodwin. His second year, he talked about in his interview about just feeling more comfortable. He talked about how he's always been the guy kind of in the background that was making suggestions, but he was never that decision maker during the game and on game day when you got to make the tough decisions and the right calls. And I think a year later, he's a little bit more comfortable with that, and and he'll be better. Coaches are learning too, just like players. Coaches develop just like players. So I think that's a plus for Clemson. I think our defensive backfield will be better. Our linebacking core, I think, we probably have the best linebacker duo or one of the best linebacker duos in the country this year. And then we're very deep at defensive tackle. Edge, we're not deep. We got some depth issues on the edge. We got XT, who's a guy that's been riddled with injury, but when healthy, he's a problem on the field. So that's yet to be seen how that'll play out and how ready those guys are. Those 2 deep guys behind them will play. And then on offense, I just think we don't have to be the TCU offense, right? But I do think that one of the things that we were able to do against Florida State last year was run the ball really effectively. And I think that'll be even better this year. I think our running game will be better this year just because of how Garrett Riley calls his offense. If you look at TCU last year, they ran the ball like 54% of the time. So they actually ran more than they throw, even though everybody, when they think of Garrett Riley, they think of the air raid offense, right? But there's a lot of running when it goes into this air raid offensive scheme, right? And when you got the depth at the running back room like we do, I think you can really exploit that. And then you can open up the middle of the field and the downfield passes. And I do think this Clemson offense this year, they're not going to be the 2018 Trevor Lawrence-led offense that blew Alabama off the field in the national championship. Okay, I'm not a delusional fan with orange-colored shades that it's going to say that, right? Just because we got a new offensive coordinator. But I think we will be closer to that this year than we have been in 2021 and 2022. If you look at the 2021 and 2022 Clemson offenses, at times they were one of the most frustrating, difficult offenses to watch. There was no downfield threat. They had no explosive plays whatsoever, and that really handicaps an offense. When you tell a defense or when you show a defense repeatedly that you cannot attack downfield, you're giving them a free pass. And I think that changes to a degree this year. I think the Clemson offense will be more explosive. and I think our running game takes another step forward. So for those reasons, I think we get the win. But that's just me.
Yeah, and obviously you guys made pretty good points with Florida State having some depth issues, obviously on offensive line and in linebacker. But like I said, I'm looking at this team. I've seen the improvements from the Willie Taggart I can't even speak era, where I mean they were just horrible. They were horrible on the line of scrimmage. They were horrible on the defensive line. Everything about Florida State was horrible. Mike Norvell comes in. He adds in a new identity, and started to see it slowly but surely last year. Now, granted, look at the last 6 teams last 5 teams. No, it was 6 teams that they played. The best team that they played was who? Miami maybe, Syracuse. Some bad teams, right?
Yeah.
They started to get confidence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, even Florida. I mean, they barely won that game, but still, that's a big win for them, beating Florida, a team they were getting dominated by. Didn't matter how bad Florida was over the past couple of years. Finally got over that hump. But anyway, they were beating bad teams. They barely beat a horrible Oklahoma team, but they started to get better and better. And I feel really strong about Florida State this year. They got a tough week 1 game. They will already have a test in against LSU. I think, I'm going to be real, I have them losing to LSU. But I think they turn it around after losing to LSU. They even play at Boston College. That's going to be a tricky game for Florida State. Before they play y'all, they play at Boston College. Watch out for that. I'm not saying Florida State's going to lose, but they could.
They better not.
They could. They
better not.
Go take all the air out of that game.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah.
That game will not feel the same if they walk into there 1-2.
Yeah. They're not going to lose to Boston College. But I am saying they could get caught looking ahead, and that could be a little bit closer than what people think. And that's like people picking Duke to beat y'all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But no. Then I'm just gonna push it past because I got a storm coming here. I don't want
Same here.
Thunder and all. Did you already hear the thunder and stuff?
Yeah. Well, I saw the lightning through your window, and then there was thunder in my background too. We're not even in the same place. That's pretty.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. But anyway, you push past Syracuse, they won't be that good. I think Wake Forest won't be as good as what they have been over the past couple of years. Probably going to have a weird type of sneaky offense like they always do. Don't you get a bye before I think you get a bye before Miami. Correct me if I'm wrong. But you look at this stretch right here. This is going to be a tough stretch. At Miami, who cares? At NC State, and then Notre Dame. I will say this about Miami. I think Miami is going to be structurally way better than what they were last year. They bring in 4 offensive linemen. That offensive line last year was horrible. Let's just be real here. Looking like they're turning over that scheme. They used to be like a spread type offense, going back to pro. I'm not a big fan of that, but I think their defense is going to be really, really good. They have a lot of really good athletic players. And then after Miami, you go at NC State, and then, oh, by the way, blown right to a home game against Notre Dame. That stretch is kind of scary if I'm a Clemson fan. Yeah, I think Cade Klubnik will be playing close to as the best that he will be playing up to that point in these games. But going on the road against NC State again, last time you played there, you did lose. NC State brings in a very experienced QB, Brennan Armstrong, if I'm not mistaken. Their defense is really, really good. Now, I don't like the 3-3-5 defense. I don't know if you guys do or don't. I'm not a big 3-3-5 guy. I think statistically that's one of the worst defenses to run. That's just my opinion. And then, obviously, Notre Dame, who brings in Sam Hartman. They don't really have any – well, they don't really have any great wide receivers. They got a couple decent guys. But, I mean, they still beat you last year pretty soundly. You guys really couldn't move the football till, the fourth quarter. I mean, you were down, I think, 28-0. I think this Notre Dame –
Please don't remind me.
I
Bro,
think this
that
Notre
was
Dame team, but for real, I think this Notre Dame team's going to be better than last year. They're another team that got really hot towards the end. I think they finished 7-1 in their last 8 games. Lost to USC kind of in an embarrassing fashion. Let's be real here with that. But they still beat you without a quarterback. And watch out for Notre Dame. Notre Dame's going to be better than last year. I think that game's going to be really, really close. Now, luckily for you, you get it at home. And as well as Dabo Swinney hasn't lost to a team in back-to-back years since I think Florida State in 2013 and 2014. So the odds are in your favor for that. I could be wrong.
I think that's right.
No, you're correct. Yeah.
But, so the odds are in your favor against Notre Dame. And then forget about Georgia Tech. I don't think they'll be that good. The last 2 games, North Carolina, then at South Carolina.
Don't say it.
Two teams that are going to have top 15 passing offenses. Pass defense was Clemson's weakness last year.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, you guys shut down Drake May. That was your best game, at least in my opinion. I don't know about you. I think that was your best game.
By far.
Now, here's the thing with North Carolina. They're only going to be as good as their defense. They're going to have a really good offense. I get it, right? The problem with North Carolina is they have a really tough schedule. I mean, look at their first 3 weeks. That is brutal. Probably first 4 weeks, probably the hardest 4 weeks out of any team. South Carolina, Appalachian State, look out for them, and Minnesota, and then at Pitt, I think. I think that's their first 4 games. That is brutal for a team that's trying to find an identity defensively.
Yeah.
And by the way, they lost their best cornerback to Texas A&M.
Yeah,
But they're going to have a really, really, really good offense. And then, the Gamecocks. I'm telling you this much. South Carolina's going to knock off one of these 4 teams. Georgia, us, Tennessee, y'all, or Texas A&M. Those are probably the 4 best teams they'll play. They're going to knock off one of the 4.
We'll let Tennessee jump on that grenade.
Well, after last year, I just don't see it happening. Now, I will say South Carolina should not have beaten y'all last year. Let's be real here. That was kind of a fluke. You gave up almost 400 yards passing to Spencer Rattler, but they had -9 yards rushing or something. You had 2 terrible special teams plays that were just flukish. It was a fluke. In my opinion, it was a fluke loss, but I think the South Carolina team is going to be better than last year, especially defensively. And I don't think the rush game is going to be as horrible as what people are saying. I mean, who is it? Phil Steele? Phil Steele has this team finishing towards the bottom in the entire country in rushing yards. I think it'll be better. I think it'll be a little bit better than that. I don't think they're going to have a great rush offense, but they're going to have a really good pass game. They're going to live and die off Spencer Rattler throwing the football. I think that last 2-game stretch is going to be tough for almost anybody, especially with a team that, just being real, you do have a lot of experience at DB, but last year that was your weakness defensively. I think you drop one of the last 2 games, at least in my opinion. And then in that stretch at Miami, at NC State, Notre Dame, that's probably your toughest stretch. I could see a loss there as well. So let me know what you guys think on that.
I mean, you made a lot of solid points. I think we agree that stretch of Miami, North Carolina, Miami, NC State, Notre Dame, that's going to be a really tricky one, especially if Miami finally actually plays up to their talent level. NC State's always tough playing at Carter Finley, and then obviously Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame is the best team on our schedule personally, and that's kind of the team I'm the most when I look at the schedule, the one that jumps off the page the most. I know everyone talks about Florida State and how good they're going to be, and I get it, but I think from a pure talent, line of scrimmage, coaching type of matchup, I think Notre Dame is your toughest game. They're going to have the best offensive line that you face on that schedule, and you pride yourself on the defensive line play, but that was your defensive line got pushed around last year up in South Bend. They're going to have a really, really good running game. Sam Hartman is very familiar with the Clemson offense. all of that. You're playing a team that has beaten Clemson and has the confidence that they can do it again. And that's why Notre Dame, I think, is the team. I just if Clemson's going to drop a game, I feel like that's the one that's going to be. It would suck to lose them twice in a row, but seeing what we saw last year and what they can be defensively and some of the changes they've made offensively, that could be a game that you drop. So, but yeah, I mean, I can see how you came to the conclusions. I think the most pushback I'll give is on the final two games of the schedule, because I don't think North Carolina or South Carolina are very good. I think they're going to be good teams, but I think matchup wise, I think those are the most favorable of the three kind of spots you picked Clemson to possibly lose. I think those final two games are pretty favorable from a matchup standpoint. I don't think South Carolina is going to be very good on the offensive line. With some of the injuries they've had and kind of the depth they have, and obviously if they're not going to be able to run the ball, it's going to be tough. And if your defensive secondary has made the improvements it has, you're not going to be giving up as many explosive plays in the passing game as you did. And obviously we've seen Drake May before. We know what that offense is going to look like. For the most part, they have some transfer wide receivers that are intriguing. But I think you stand a better chance in those games, because I think from a line of scrimmage matchup standpoint, I think your defensive line will be able to win those matchups, and I think your offensive line will be able to win those matchups as well. South Carolina may be improved defensively, but I got to see it first. They've had a bottom tier rushing defense for the past 2 years, and so if that doesn't change, then if Clemson can run the ball effectively, that should be a win.
They should have done that last year. We would have won
don't
the
get me
dang
started
game.
on that.
But let's not digress into that. But yeah, kind of what you were saying, Jordan. The game. If I had to pick a game on Clemson's schedule that you asked me honestly, what's the game you're most worried about? It's Notre Dame. The Notre Dame game concerns me the most, and it's strictly because of the way that they beat us last year. They out-physicaled us last year. They pushed us around. We didn't look like we belonged on that field with Notre Dame. And I don't enjoy saying that at all, because defensive line was supposed to be one of our strengths last year. And they consistently got blown off the ball play after play after play. That Notre Dame line just reestablished the line of scrimmage on every single play. And it was tough to watch. I do understand that the defense was playing at a huge disadvantage for a good portion of that game, because our offense literally did nothing. Outside of a couple drives in that game, our offense could not muster up any sort of life. So you keep putting your defense out there time and time again. Eventually, the attitude just kind of shifts. The old, voice in the back of your head creeps in, and you're like, what are we doing this for? The offense ain't going to score anyway. So, and that's not something that you want, but they're all humans. They can see the same offense that we're all looking at, and they probably know way more football than we'll ever know. So they can clearly see that it's a problem, right? So the Notre Dame game definitely does worry me, and they do add Sam Hartman, even though that's probably to their detriment, because Sam Hartman cannot beat Clemson. He's lost to us 4 years in a row. So no, I'm just kidding. But that's definitely an upgrade at quarterback, right? So I think Notre Dame got better in some ways. So that game definitely does worry me. North Carolina, I would have to see some life from their defense to believe it, because they're just awful on defense. I almost feel bad for Drake May to have to play on that team. And I know he's a North Carolina guy through and through. He bleeds Carolina blue and all that stuff, and I can appreciate that. But, man, they are wasting probably the greatest quarterback they've had since I don't know when, because their defense is just not good. I honestly thought that they would make a change at defensive coordinator this past season.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that they didn't. They bring a lot of guys back on defense, but, again, if you look at their defense last year, I don't know if that's a good thing that you bring a lot of those dudes back. Maybe they're a year wiser and a year better and all that. you could always say that, but they got the same play caller, and that's what tells me that it's not going to change very much at North Carolina because they don't have a new voice, they don't have a new play caller on the defensive side of the ball. And I think Drake May will be great. I think he'll be one of the better quarterbacks in the country, definitely in the ACC. But he's not going to have a defense to support him, and they're going to lose games because of it. And then South Carolina, we better not, dude. That game was that was a tough game last year, man. Just not only losing to South Carolina, but the way that we lost was just, it was very fluky. It was just, you're watching it and you're like, what are we doing? Like, why do we keep throwing the ball? DJ clearly can't hit the broadside of a barn. This dude, couldn't hit a wide open receiver in that game if he tried. And we just weren't running the ball. And then we did that crazy, special teams play where we coughed the ball up that I just could not believe. I think that was a Dabo Sweeney special, by the way. He needs to go ahead and retire that play. Don't ever do it again. But it was a tough game to watch last year, and they ended like every major streak that we had going. Our home winning streak, we hadn't lost a home game since 2016. They took that away. They ended the 7-game skid that they had against us. So it was a tough game, and I don't see us losing that game. I don't think South Carolina is good enough, but then again, they may be a little bit better than we think they are this season. We'll definitely know more going into the month of November if that game's shaping up to be something serious.
Yeah, and I'll leave you guys with this. To all the fans out there, everyone watching, obviously I could be wrong. It wouldn't be the first time. But I will say last year I had you guys going 10-2, and I was right. Now the year before, as a Georgia fan, we played y'all, right?
Yeah.
I think I told Jordan this. I had Clemson beating us all off season.
Really?
I thought Clemson was going to be the better team. I actually had my preseason college football playoff was I think I had Ohio State versus Clemson. And then I had Clemson winning it all in 2021.
Ouch.
Yeah.
I think Josh Pate picked us to win it all that year too.
Guys. So. Maybe I jinxed it for you guys ever since then, but no.
Yeah.
So I could obviously be wrong. Last year I was right. 2020 I was kind of right. Although if you look at some of Clemson's losses over the past couple of seasons, some of them are flukish. It's weird. Every team has letdown games, whatever have you. But the way Clemson has lost, the South Carolina game, that was a fluke. Let's be real here. The 2020 Notre Dame game, that was a fluke in my opinion. Now other people disagree. Your three most important players and probably best players were out, weren't they? Who was that? I know T-Law was out. Tyler Davis was out.
Tyler Davis, and Mike Jones, and James Skalski were all out.
Skalski was out. And then, like you said, your 2016 game, you lost to Pitt. That was kind of a flukish game. Yeah. Clemson never gives up 40. Well, let's be real here. Clemson never gives up more than 30. They gave up 43 to Pitt at home. But every team has these letdown scenarios, type of situations and games. I think Clemson, you might see one or two of those this year. That's what I think. And then for a team that is better than you, I'm really high on Notre Dame. I really am. Like you guys, they have potential to be better than Clemson, and Florida State has potential to be better than Clemson. Not saying they both will be, not saying they will or they won't, but they both have potential to be a little bit better than Clemson, and Clemson could end up losing those games at home. Other than that, at home, I don't see a loss. Now, North Carolina, they have way too much talent to be horrible defensively. They recruit top 3 or 4 in the ACC, so they should not be this bad. Gene Chizik, his scheme is way too old school, in my opinion. He's wasting talent defensively, and obviously Drake May. But they remember losing by 30 points to you last year, so maybe they'll use that as a chip on your shoulder. Again, you get them at home. I'm not saying you're going to lose North Carolina.
Yeah.
But like I said, I do expect 1 or 2 letdown games, and then we'll see between the Florida State and Notre Dame game. So I think you're a 9-3 or 10-2 team this year. But yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. Like I said, hey, it's pretty cool to be on a Clemson show. Probably the first one I've ever been on. I'm a Georgia fan, so I'm bred to, I guess, hate you guys, but I love college football. I'm a big college football fan. That's going to be the career path I'm going to go into after journalism, hopefully broadcasting one day.
Awesome,
But
man.
anyway, yeah, thank you guys so much for having me.
Hey,
Absolutely.
Before you go, Tyler, speaking of fluke games, keep your eye on Syracuse.
Really? Oh, yeah. You always got to keep your eye on Syracuse.
If you watch
the road game, okay.
If you watch our show at all, I bring this up. For whatever reason, I don't know what it is, but the Syracuse game is always tough for Clemson. It always is. So it's if to your point saying you expect a fluke, type of loss for Clemson this season, that could be one of those. If you're looking, I hope not. We've only lost to them once.
Yeah.
But they're always, even when we win, they're always the toughest, most grind out. Like, okay, we won. Oh, phew! Thank God. All right, move on to next week. Right? They're those type of games seemingly every year.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for one of those fluke type teams that could pop up and bite Clemson this year, not that Syracuse will be any good, but it doesn't seem to matter whether they're good or not. We still play really close with them almost every single time.
Yeah. Oh, and Tyler, one last thing before you go. I know we've held you way longer than we originally talked about. But just let everybody know where to find you. Just where they can find your stuff, your YouTube channel, what you're doing over at SG1, all of that.
Yeah. You can go find. I'm going to be working with SG1 again, hopefully during the season. I'm usually thrown around on channels sometimes. He's at the SEC football channel. I think he just calls it SEC at SG1 Sports now.
Yep.
You can find me on my channel. It's just called, I don't know. I just throw stuff on that page. I'm not going to lie. I just throw whatever.
Hey, I'm a fan. I'm a sub. So
I'm posting college football now.
I'll put your channel in the description.
Yeah,
in the comment
I appreciate that. But yeah, that's just a throwaway channel. I do whatever have you on there. And then you'll probably see me on the Georgia channel a lot this year. But yeah, I'll be thrown around the channels. Maybe Mark will let me on his main channel again. Now, I haven't been on there since the Georgia Clemson game, but maybe he'll throw me on there here and there. But yeah, like I said, thank you guys for having me, though. It was an honor to be back on the Voice of College Football channels, but as well as talk to you guys.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much for joining us. This was awesome.
Yeah, man, it was great. Appreciate it.
See you, boys.
See you.
Later, Tyler. All right, guys, that was Tyler P. This was a really, really awesome to have him on the show. I consider him a close friend. We've been familiar with each other and talked a lot about college football over the past few years. And so it's really nice to, it's kind of crazy because a few years ago we were just, hanging out in comment sections of other YouTubers we watch, and now we're both doing stuff on college football shows and talking about the sport we love. So this is really awesome. So make sure you guys check him out. I'm going to put his channel in the description when I can actually put the link. There we go. Wouldn't let me copy the link. So make sure you guys check him out.
Yeah, man, that was a good interview, man. It's nice to have other people. It's nice to hear fans of other teams and just outside perspectives on the Clemson program and kind of how, people on the outside view Clemson outside of a YouTube comment section, which can kind of get, sometimes there's just a bunch of trolls in there and they just say stuff just to say it. So it's nice to have an actual conversation with somebody outside the Clemson program that kind of gives a perspective, kind of like when we talked to our buddy Twisted over there on the South Carolina channel. So it's always good to get other perspective, and it kind of shapes your view a little bit better, and helps you see it from somebody else's point of view, kind of why they're saying what they're saying.
Absolutely.
It's not always just like, oh, I hate Clemson, so they're going 9-3, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes.
No. although some of them do hate Clemson.
No, yeah. Some of them do. But yeah,
which is cool too. I mean,
of course.
I hate South Carolina. If I want to pick them to go 4-8, I'm gonna pick them to go 4-8. They're not.
Yeah.
Going, I don't expect them.
They're not going 4-8. Probably 7-5.
Yeah.
7-5.
All right, guys. You want to take questions from the comment section and then get on out of here?
Yeah. Let's head to the comment section. We got 36 people in here right now, man. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us, man. Another great show coming to a close, but we'll give you guys a few minutes to get into the comment section, ask any questions you want. Clemson just had their big media availability. Every single coach was available to the local media there in Clemson. So a lot of sound bites coming out of there. Dabo Swinney talked about a lot of stuff. Talked about our injury report, which I don't know if you saw it, but it looks pretty promising heading into fall camp. Hopefully we can get out of fall camp healthy. But I think we're heading into fall camp with 5 guys that won't participate, at least initially. And then 4 of those 5 guys are going to be back at some point in time during fall camp. So looking good. Tyler Venables will be out for the season, at least until later in the season. I guess he just had hip surgery for a torn labrum on Monday. So he'll be out. And then you got Trey Williams still recovering from the shoulder surgery. Miles Oliver still recovering. Hampton Earl, and then Bubba McAtee also still not a full go yet. So those are kind of the 4 that will be back at some point in time during the spring. So that looks pretty good heading into spring. We got all of our major pieces ready to roll. It was nice to hear that Adam Randall and Troy Stellato and Bo Collins and all those dudes are ready to go, fully healthy, no restrictions. So I look forward to seeing or hearing how camp's going, and some of the stuff that'll be coming out of camp since we have a healthy roster. Hopefully, no last minute torn ACLs.
Yeah, that's great. And it's great to hear that. Before because ACC media days are coming up next week, so we're going to hear a lot more about kind of where this team is. But it's really exciting to just see that the pieces are coming together, and most of what Clemson is going to be relying on this season is going to be available. But for fall camp, and that's just something that Clemson hasn't really had the luxury of the past couple of years. Just the injury luck hasn't allowed you to be fully where you want to be. So that's pretty exciting.
Yep. Yeah. Here's to a healthier year.
John gets in and says, anybody pick up on Dabo's comments about this last 14 playoff? He seems double motivated. Yeah, he does. He did seem pretty excited.
Yeah. He seemed relaxed too. He was kind of joking and talking about his summer, and he talked about the accountability points, which is a big thing in Clemson's program. I guess they only have 2 people that are negative on accountability points out of the 135 man roster or whatever it is. So guys are taking it serious. They're doing their off-season work like they're supposed to, and the whole team seems super motivated to me. There just seems to be a renewed energy around the program. You heard Dabo talk about it, right? If you watch his interview, he talked a lot about the offensive personnel and just the players and their renewed confidence, I think is how he put it, in what Clemson is doing on offense. And that's good to hear. So the players are bought into the new scheme. They apparently like what's going on. And I think that translates to the field. So seems like Clemson football is definitely trending in a better direction than we have in a couple years.
Absolutely. Presto T gets in and says, I wonder why other punters seem to always have career days against us. Yeah, it always seems like it, don't it? I mean, and really in the past, well, really last year, 2 to 3 losses. I mean, the Notre Dame game, it felt like you were always, working from inside the 20. The South Carolina game was the same way. And you're in a lot of it has to do with your inability to flip the field, because if you can't flip the field, the other team's offense is going to be in better field position, and if you get a stop, you're going to be pinned back more often. So it's it's a very complimentary type of thing when it comes to punting, because if your punting isn't good, it can another team can have more success punting, because at the end of the day, football is very much a field position game, and the team that's working from worse field position is going to have more issues punting.
Yep.
And in turn, the other team is going to have more success punting. WB2 says, how many injuries are conditioning related? I wouldn't pin.
So Trey Williams is recovering from shoulder surgery.
Yeah.
Miles Oliver is recovering from shoulder surgery. And then Hampton Earl and Bubba McAtee are both out with undisclosed injuries. They're not telling us what they are, so maybe those are conditioning related. I don't know, but those are the only two we don't really know.
Well, I know that Hampton Earl's happened in the spring game, and that was that seemed to be a knee thing.
Yeah. Okay.
So I don't think that's conditioning.
I don't think
conditioning related.
I wouldn't think any of them are conditioning related. And then obviously Tyler Venables will be out for the majority of the season. He just got hip surgery. So
yeah.
I've
actually been pretty pleased just from what visually from what I've seen from the players.
Yeah.
With how the strength. I mean, man, XT looks like a.
Yo, have you seen that, dude?
Adam Randall, even TJ Dudley, who obviously just got kicked off the team, he was looking really, really good.
Yeah.
I think I've said this. I don't know if I've said this on the show, but I have kind of felt like there's been some changes with how they've kind of gone about strength and conditioning this offseason, because of some of the injury issues of the past. I don't know how much of it had to do with conditioning and all of that, but it does seem like there's Clemson is doing a little bit different, because I do think the players just look. A lot of players will just look in better shape. I mean, they just and John just mentioned it. Dietrich Pennington, he's lost weight. I think he's down to 336. That's
336. Yeah. Thomas Alston was talking about him in his interview. And
that man was massive.
And how, and he said he's a lean, as lean as you could be at 336. He said he looks good. His body comp, they do all the, fancy measurements, bod pod type deals to get their actual, lean muscle mass versus body fat thing. So it's a very accurate, depiction of where they are physically. And he talked about Chad Pennington and, how much he's worked this summer, and all those guys really. He said Thomas Alston said he came back from his vacation. He was like, these dudes had obviously been working in the weight room and getting and doing what they need to do physically to be ready for the season. So it sounds like the offensive line is trending in a good direction. Talked about Tristan Lee and how much he's improved over the season, and kind of how he's maybe started pulling away a little bit. So we'll see. Maybe he'll be our starting left tackle. But, we'll see. I don't know. It'll work itself out.
Yep. Presto gets in again. He says, any lesser known guys you want to see this year? I'm really hoping Zaire Patterson gets some shine. Yeah, he would be a big one because of just some of the question marks you have at defensive end. And he's a guy that the staff has been trying to push to, kind of, take his process more seriously and really decide what he wants to be. Because I think he was a top 100 kid. He was one of the best edge rushers in his class. he certainly has the talent and ability. It's kind of been being dedicated to being the best he can be, and that's what the staff has kind of been harping on, and hoping that he'll finally, just that something will click there.
Yeah.
But another guy, another lesser known guy. Let's see. Well, the guy I'm thinking of isn't really lesser known. He just hasn't played much. I think Toriano Pride and Jaden Lucas. Coming into their sophomore years, I think they could make huge jumps. I'm high on both of them. Huge Jaden Lucas fan just because of his measurables. Like, he is like the prototypical corner. Like, he's like, what if Mike Reed was going to make a corner in the lab? I think it would Jaden Lucas would come out. So
Yeah.
The ceiling is really high with that kid, and Toriano Pride is exciting as well. So I definitely would like to see them take steps as sophomores.
And we saw how much those two dudes grew up last year.
Yeah.
Just kind of being thrown in the pan, thrown in the fire. So that's a killer too deep right there, man. You got Wiggins and Sheridan Jones, and then Toriano Pride and Jaden Lucas. So the defensive backs are looking better. It could be now with TJ Dudley gone, could be one of those, guys who, maybe wasn't looking at a lot of playing time in the linebacking room, coming in and stepping in and taking, because somebody's going to have to take those snaps that he was going to get, so could be one of those linebackers.
Possibly. John asks, are you expecting to finally see Pennington on the field much? I think so, to a degree. And I don't think he's going to be a guy that Clemson is going to be able to rely on this year. I don't know if he'll be the first guy off the bench if, say like a Walker Parks or Marcus Tate goes down. But I think the hope is that this Clemson's offense will be in a shape where you can afford to put you can get guys more reps and rotate more on the offensive line, and that's just something that Clemson was able to do in the past that they haven't been able to do the past couple of years. And also it really comes down to Pennington himself and whether he takes the necessary steps to become better as a player, because it's not just been his just the physical stuff that has kept him off the field. He just needs to be better about and really understand what he's doing within the offense. So if he takes those steps, he'll get on the field, because he's got all the tools, the measurables.
Yeah.
He could be a really, really, really good interior offensive lineman.
Yeah, you heard Dabo talk, him and Thomas Alston, about how they really do want to play. They hope they're in a position this year. They haven't been the past two seasons, but they hope they're, in a position this year to kind of roll out a lot of those offensive linemen, so you could see a Chad Pennington or a Harris Sewell or, those type of guys roll in and get some valuable snaps, maybe when Clemson's up in some of these games. If, the offense is clicking and doing what we need to do, you'll definitely see. I think Dabo said he'd like to get, 10 offensive linemen in a game. But again, your starters gotta make that possible.
Absolutely. Let's see. Any insight on what happened with Dudley? Saw somewhere where something might have went down with him at practice. Yeah, I won't. I don't want to talk too much about it, but just know that it was something that had to be taken care of, and it was something that was not just handed down from the coaching staff, but the team kind of wanted this to happen because it was something serious, and it was something. It wasn't the first time that it happened, and there was kind of a violation of kind of the team bond and trust, and that's just something that you can't have. That's all I'll say. But just know it wasn't just a coaching a Dabo thing handing down the punishment. This was something that the team kind of wanted as well. So when stuff like that happens, it is what it is. You have to do what you have to do to, for the team, and that's what happened here. See. LFG says, in my opinion, 23 Clemson offensive improvements will elevate a lot of metrics for the Tigers. Yeah, I agree. A lot of the issues of the past 2 seasons compounded on each other and made them worse. And, Clemson, from a metric standpoint, looked a lot worse than probably they should have been. So, being more balanced within the offense and being more adaptable will help all facets of the offense and everybody understanding what they're supposed to be doing. The quarterback being on the same page with his receivers, situational play calling, all of that stuff kind of goes into a successful offense. So definitely think that, especially when if Clemson comes out and plays really well offensively, the first few games, you could definitely see those metrics start to change because, Clemson's not really power rated as high as probably their talent level says they should be. They may be like a top 10, top 15 team in, betting odds and Vegas models and all that. When they're, from a talent perspective, they're a top 5 type team.
Right. But the talent's there. Just got to execute on the field. We need that explosiveness back. And I'm ready to see an offensive coordinator play to the personnel strengths.
Absolutely.
That's just what we need to see.
WB2 says, I would like to see Banks Pope get some shine this year. Yeah, he had really nice moments in the spring game. Kind of a name that was off the radar, but I could definitely see him getting in for some plays and being kind of a change of pace tight end. And kind of, is not a guy that's going to be on the scouting report. But that was pretty cool to see him make some plays. Makes you really excited about the prospects of this tight end room in general between Branding Stool and Sapp, Sage Ennis, and then you got the two true freshmen coming in. This tight end room has some really unique skill sets. And so I'm excited to see kind of what that looks like. Lucas had an all-time highlight in that high school. Yeah, that interception. Yeah, he jumped like 50 feet off the ground. That was pretty crazy. Yeah. That just shows you the kind of athlete he is.
Yeah, he had jetpacks in his shoes, man.
Yeah. Is Quadzilla RB3? It seems like it.
Yes.
I think so. Just from the way the staff talks about him, I do think that, Keith Adams is right there with him too. And I'm really interested to see where how the true freshmen, Jarvis Green and Jay Haynes, what they kind of look like. I'm sure. I don't think that all of them are going to play.
No, I'm sure we see at least one of those new guys redshirt. Probably.
Yeah, but I'm really interested. I'm really excited to kind of hear what some of the rumblings out of camp are with some of the true freshmen as well. But yeah, I think Dominique Thomas will. I do think he's in good shape to be kind of that third back right now.
Yeah, we saw what he was capable of in the spring game. He had an amazing game. So that running back room's deep, man. It is deep.
This might be off topic, but what do y'all think will be the top 5 in the final rankings at the end of the season?
Outside of the usual teams that everybody's going to say.
End of the regular season or end of the season, and like end of bowl season, national championship, all that is
like playoff type deal.
Yeah, I assume the end of the entire season, but
yeah,
I don't know. I don't know. I guess right now, top 5.
You got to say Georgia.
Yeah, Georgia's the preseason favorite to win it for the 3rd year in a row. I guess you got to pick Georgia just because of what they've done. I am interested to see how Carson Beck plays and how the transition from Monken to Bobo looks. But defensively,
Yeah.
they're going to be elite. They have a really manageable schedule. Tennessee is really the only, on paper right now, is the only true threat. So they have a really good chance of going 12-0, 11-1 at the worst. And
Yeah, they
right
definitely
back
have
in Atlanta, and they have more talent than pretty much anybody right now.
Yeah, they definitely have a favorable schedule. Probably Michigan or Ohio State, one of them two. I would assume is going to come out of the Big Ten, unless Penn State just comes out of nowhere.
Penn State is intrigued. They're loaded, man. Defensively,
Yeah.
they're going to be nasty. If Drew Aller is that guy, and they kind of have their receivers step up, that could be a really they could be a playoff team, and kind of be an upset pick.
I think those are
that division.
The only three teams in that conference that could really that are good enough. I think.
Yeah. I think out west, I think Southern Cal and Oregon are really intriguing. Those are the two teams I think that have the talent profile necessary to make the playoff. But the Pac-12 in general is going to be really strong this year. Washington with Michael Penix is looking to be really strong again. Oregon State, we'll see how they look. They had a really strong year last year. DJ
Utah
is up there now. Utah is back-to-back Pac-12 champions, so you can never count them out. Pac-12 is going to be a really good league this year. They might cannibalize themselves and maybe not have a team in the playoff, which
that's true.
This would be a shame because I think the league has gotten a lot better. And it would, if they didn't get a team in the playoff, it wouldn't really show that. But I think that from a top to bottom standpoint, that they're going to be pretty good this year.
Yeah.
And then in the ACC, obviously, I think it's Clemson and Florida State. I think those are the two clear favorites. And I don't see if Miami were to if everything were to suddenly click, they have the talent on the roster maybe, but other than that,
but I think if somebody else wins the ACC, that means that
it probably it seems it probably means Clemson and Florida State didn't.
Yeah, they weren't as good as preseason hype or projections, and then the ACC probably cannibalized themselves and probably doesn't have a team in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And then what? Big 12.
I mean, Kansas State had a strong year, but they don't seem like a team that would win it again. TCU, I think, is still going to be good, but I think they take a step back. So I mean,
for sure.
Texas is intriguing because of all the talent on that roster. Quinn Ewers coming back. They've done well in the transfer portal? Is this the year they kind of put it together? Oklahoma is still really talented, but I think the Big 12 has the least, it's not very clear what their playoff contenders are.
No.
What they're going to look like.
I mean, you would say Oklahoma or Texas, but how good will those teams really be?
Neither one of them has won the league.
Right. Yeah. Is Texas finally gonna do something? I don't know. I think they might be the league that maybe gets left out of the last 14 playoff, which it's a big year, man. It's the the final 14 playoff. So whatever 4 teams make it, that's a big deal in my opinion. To be the last 4 teams, a part of we're going to kind of close at the end of this season. We're going to kind of close this chapter of college football. This will kind of be a separate, kind of deal that we look at, years on down the road in college football as the 14 college football playoff era.
Yeah.
And, it's, to be one of the teams to make the last one would be pretty incredible.
Yeah. Especially for your team that's made it 6 of the 9 years it's been in existence.
Yeah. Especially for Clemson. That'd be 7 out of 9 years.
Yeah.
7 out of 10.
7 out of 10.
7 out of 10 years. That's a pretty good that's a pretty good average on making the playoffs. So
all right, we'll close with this question and then get on out of here. My man John, he's done a great job over on the main channel with the Big Ten live show and the Michigan channel as well. He comes in and asks, QB play should improve. Offensive play calling will improve. Shipley, one of the best running backs in the country. How is your O-line? That is a great question, John. Well, Clemson is on paper. They're in as
Good.
good shape on the offensive line as they've been in the past couple of years. They returned 4 or 5 starters, a line that has improved, that saw improvement last year. Was a really good run blocking unit. Um, I think Clemson, from an offensive line standpoint, is going to be really strong. I think the real question is you're replacing a multi-year starter at left tackle, and that's always hard to do. In Jordan
Yep.
McFadden.
Yeah.
So I think that's the one big question mark for Clemson on the offensive line. But you have a returning center, you have a lot of guys returning, and I think the talent profile on the offensive line is better than it's been in a while. You have more bodies in the room, and you have guys with higher ceilings than previous years. I think Clemson has done a good job in the past couple of cycles of kind of beefing up and getting more physicality at the offensive line, more size, because that's kind of something that has plagued them the past couple of years. They look like Clemson has looked like a high level Power 5 team, like NFL talent on the field pretty much everywhere, but the offensive line, where in games where they were playing, like the Georgia game in 2021, it was a clear mismatch. Like our guys did not look like they belonged on the same field as that Georgia defensive line.
Nope.
And that's when you get to the playoff, though, that you need the kind of offensive line that like a Michigan had or a Georgia has. Those are the types of offensive lines that win national championships.
Yeah, because you just go against elite defenses as you climb the ranks, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Once you get into the playoffs, like there's no bad defense in the playoffs.
Yep.
You got defenses that might be better than others, but there's not a team in the playoff with a bad defense.
Yeah, especially there's not a lot of teams in the playoffs with a bad defensive line. Like you're gonna face some talent on the defensive line in the playoff, and that's something you need to be able to have guys that can match up physically. And I think Clemson has taken steps the past couple of cycles to do that, and now it's just about is the development under Thomas Austin has it been up to snuff? So that's the question mark.
I really like what Thomas Austin's done so far. Again, he's still a new coach. He's still trying to figure some things out. Still developing his style and growing as a coach. But I think he's going to be, really good. 4 or 5 years from now, when we look back, I think he's going to be, one of the guys that kind of turned it around for Clemson's offensive line. We really just need to, we really need him to start developing guys and putting them in the league. That's always going to be a question.
Hurting us on the trail.
It's always going to hurt us on the trail until we start producing NFL offensive linemen. It just is. Clemson doesn't have the track record to sell that. But I think the offensive line takes another step forward this year. You got 4 returning starters. I think Tristan Leigh, if I had to guess right now, I think Tristan Leigh steps in and he'll be the starting left tackle. And I think that'll be your offensive line, at least your first 5 running out there. I think they can rotate in some good guys because we do have some good depth along the offensive line. But I think they take a step forward. You talked about how good we ran the ball last year. Again, I think we do even better this year with the creative play calling and spreading the field out a little bit. And, Shipley and Maffa in there, maybe some 2 back sets to even help the offensive line further. So I think the offensive line is definitely going to take a step forward, and we really need to. Because those guys are going to have to really do their job early while Cade and the receivers figure out and get their footing. Because as high as we are on Cade and as much as we think he's the guy, not saying that he's not, but we thought the same thing about DJ.
Right.
And we saw how that worked out, right? So until it's seen, we don't really know. We believe we know what Cade's going to be at Clemson. And I would say I have no doubts that he's going to excel, especially in this type of system that's kind of tailor-made for what he does as a quarterback. But again, you don't know until it happens on the field. So, but y'all go see our boy John over at the Michigan channel, man, and the Big Ten over on the Mark Rogers main channel. He does great things, and he always shows love to our channel. So y'all go show him some love as well.
Absolutely. Good people. All right, y'all. Thank you so much. This has been a great show. We had a lot to talk about. It's been a pretty eventful week for Clemson football, and and then we also had Tyler coming on as a special guest. So thank you for tuning in for 2 hours with us.
2 hours.
Still got 31 listening. So just we really appreciate it, and it's always great to do this show every week. We're on episode 28 already.
Man.
It's crazy how time has flown, but we're almost to the season, and things are really going to start picking up. We've got more guests lined up as we get more into preview season. So thank you guys so much, and make sure you keep hitting that like button and tuning in every Thursday.
Yeah, check it out, guys. Hit that like button, and then we got special guests coming in. So stay tuned, and if you guys got any ideas on who you guys want us to bring on, or who you would like to see on the channel, man, just comment it in the comment section on this video once we get off the live, and we will see if we can make things happen. But we really do appreciate all you guys tuning in, man. Again, I say it all the time, but I think it's important. I'm super thankful for each and every one of you that come in here every week on Thursday and hang out with us and comment with us, and just basically have a conversation with us about Clemson football. It's humbling. We're just a bunch of Clemson fans who used to be in YouTube chat sections, much like yourselves, and things just worked out, and now we're on here talking about it, and it's super cool, and I'm thankful for each and every one of you. And I can't wait to see you guys next week, 7 p.m. Don't miss it. We'll have another great show for you guys.
Later, guys.
Later.